What's the difference between a Pretendian and a reconnecting Native person? Most Pretendians are white people falsely claiming to have Native identity. Some Native scholars call this race shifting or identity appropriation. These white people often hire genealogists to search for an ancestor, kind of like a form of ethnicity shopping. And if they find an ancestor from 300 or 400 years ago, they think they're entitled to claim a Native identity. Sometimes they use those ancestry or DNA services, like desperately looking for some degree of ancestry. And if they can't find it, then they simply make it up or claim to have been adopted as an adult into a community. But even those that end up getting a report saying that they're X percentage Native American, that means absolutely nothing. Mi'kmaq, Mohawk, Navajo, and Cherokee are nations. We are legal, political, cultural peoples with kinship ties in specific territories. We are not biological races for whom you can measure blood quantum. That science was debunked a long time ago, and you don't get half of your blood from your mom and half of your blood from your dad. That's colonized thinking. Reconnecting Native peoples are entirely different from Pretendians. In this case, we're talking about actual Native peoples who are disconnected from our communities because of residential schools, the 60 scoop forced adoptions, Indian hospitals, and some were excluded from community membership because of racist and sexist discrimination in the Indian Act status provisions. Reconnecting Native peoples have living relatives with living communities. They often use accredited DNA tests to prove parent and child relationships. They might also use government adoption records to prove their parentage. Some of them work with communities or membership staff to find birth and death records of deceased parents or grandparents. The core difference between Pretendians and reconnecting Natives is that we are talking about relatives that you can reach out and touch, not some ancestor from 400 years ago. And it's true, reconnecting Natives might not know their language or culture, or have relationships with peoples from their own communities or nations. But none of this is their fault. We would never ever look at a residential school survivor and judge them for not knowing their language. That's exactly what genocide does to our nations. And we have an obligation to help our relatives reconnect, help them come back home. What we don't need are Pretendians, wannabes, fakes, and fraudsters exploiting genocide to take up our places and spaces. It's simply not gonna happen. Subscribe to my channel for more content on this and other issues.